Hey, vinyl community and other listeners, it's Mazzy here, and we're doing another twofer. And I got a newbie here, fairly new to some of you. I've done a few of these with some of the vinyl community staples, and I have Chris. And I always want to call him the long box, but I know it's because of CDs, but it's the long cut. So Chris is fairly new. He's going to tell you a little bit about his station and by his channel, and we're going to do what was it called? Five what?
Under the Radar?
Under the Radar. So 10 total, five each. Under the radar for some of you and some of us, and maybe we'll see if we turn each other on to some music here. So Chris, and we see I had to wear my SF Giants hat. I grew up with the Giants and originally from New York, and those of you who know baseball. And you're an East Coaster, right?
I am. I grew up in New Jersey, lifelong Yankees fan. I don't normally wear hats, unlike you. You usually have more fashionable hats than baseball caps, but I haven't, like many of us, I haven't had a haircut in 3 months, so I'm now wearing a hat every day, which I don't understand why I need to do that. I'm only at home with my dog. It's not like I need to
I
impress him.
think people feel comfortable with that. I mean, I obviously I don't usually wear a hat inside at all, but being bald has its advantages, especially during a time of a pandemic. So
Yeah, right now I can't even tell that you're bald.
yeah, well, nobody knows. They see me bald. I feel like I'm naked when I go out or something. Okay, so anyway, tell me about the kind of music you usually like, or
Sure.
your.
So I started my channel, not the long box, but the long cut. And it was inspired by Mazzy. I was watching his videos regularly. I really didn't miss one of the ones that you've done over the past 6 months or so, I've seen every one. I've
So you
actually
have no social life, basically.
not much, yeah. Even
Yeah,
prior to
that's not what I hear.
yeah. um, I often would watch yours more than once because I would go back and look at records that you talked about.
That's
And
kind of creepy, actually, but
yeah,
that's okay.
well, I mean, oftentimes when I'm watching them, it's like a Friday night or something. I'm just going around YouTube and I stumble upon your videos. But then later, I want to actually take notes on records that I
You
should
can't
listen.
say, okay, take notes, Beatles, yesterday and today, 1966.
Yeah, I could do that. That would be if I wanted to save some time. But
Hey
um,
Siri, who are the Beatles?
now all my devices are going to go off. You hear it?
Yeah, that's dangerous, right?
That's right. Yeah. So I started my channel, The Long Cut, which is named after an Uncle Tupelo song from their last record, Anodyne. Um, I don't know. I just thought that had nice. It sounded
Yeah.
catchy. I started mine about 3 months ago, and I typically do themes, just like Mazzy does. I've done one whack-a-mole, which was a lot of fun. I plan on doing many more. I'm going to do a video tomorrow on New York. So records that either came from New York or make me think of New York. It could be the Velvet Underground or
Well, that's great because there's this thread going on. I mean, I did the Manchester, I did the LA and San Francisco cities one. So
oh,
I
nice.
thought about doing a New York. So that's good.
Yeah, your last few I haven't seen yet.
Uh,
They're queued up for this weekend.
Hey,
Yeah, yeah. I don't
when
want
you
to.
have date night, I know
I
that's
don't
the
want to
last thing you want to
bump
put
them
on.
out. But my musical taste, I was raised on sort of the classic rock pioneers, the Beatles, Stones, Dylan. A lot of the music that I love came from my father. He was a huge Springsteen fan, massive. Took me to see Bruce for the first time when I was 11 years old on the Born in the USA tour at Giant Stadium. That show changed my life.
So 84
Uh,
ish, 85.
84 or 85.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was that sort of massive tour that he did when he was playing to hundreds of thousands. I think some of the shows were in front of six figures. When him and Michael Jackson were the biggest acts in the world at the time.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, and sort of in college, I discovered this whole alt country Americana scene that I talk about ad nauseum. So I discovered Uncle Tupelo, which led me to Wilco, which led me to the Jayhawks, which led me all the way back in time to Woody Guthrie and Graham Parsons and Townes Van Zandt and Blaze Foley and John Prine.
Perfect.
I fell in love with his music. And from sort of following that, a lot of indie rock. So I was really into Pavement and Guided by Voices and present day stuff that I really like. So stuff over the last few years. Joan Shelley is probably my favorite songwriter right now.
I don't know.
Oh, she's phenomenal. She
Okay,
just
well,
released a live album today, her first one. It's only available on Bandcamp, and I took notes. It's called Live at the Banhard. I think that's a venue in Louisville, which is where she's from. She's really good friends with Will Oldham and sort of that Louisville,
yeah,
Kentucky
okay.
underground indie
Bonnie
rock.
Prince, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The Waxahachie record that just came out, I really, really love. She, I don't know if people who know her, she is dating Kevin Morby, so sort of this indie
I'll have
rock.
to get a list from you from these, that's for sure.
It, Waxahachie record, the new one, is
Okay.
phenomenal. Other news, Jason Isbell's a contemporary favorite. Everything he does. I was also very moved by his editorial in the New York Times about John Prine yesterday. He and John Prine were very, very close.
I read that, yeah.
Yeah. And then some of the stuff that the archivist loves,
I should point that out. I didn't in the introduction. I met Chris about a dozen years ago in San Francisco. He and our friend, the archivist, who's not here right now, worked together at a sort of musical aggregate online techie kind of company thing. And we only socialized maybe 4, 5, 6 times tops. We did go, and you guys reminded me the other night. I totally forgot. I picked you guys up in my little Audi at the time, and
yeah,
you and I and Amanda went to see Willie Nelson at the Fillmore. I
that's
totally
right.
forgot about that.
Such a great show. And I didn't know it was on her birthday. She noted that the other night.
Oh, okay. I didn't remember that
Yeah,
either.
that
Okay.
was probably 08, 07. I don't
So
know.
that I've known you guys. Okay. Well, I met Amanda in 2005, so a few years later. So
Because you
anyway.
used to hang out at the bar that she bartended at, right?
Well, yeah, we don't want to tell all the secret stories, but yeah, I mean, I met her, but we became music buddies, music friends, and we, hooked up at a lot of, that sounds weird. We went to a lot of shows together and turned each other on to a lot of music. I've spoken about that with her on the channel here. She turned me on to a lot of the bands. Artists I missed in the 90s, early 2000s, as I was raising my son. I'd buy a lot of records, but I didn't go out to see a lot of music for a moment, when you're being a father to a young son. So anyway, so we should probably jump into this.
Go for it.
Anyway, 5.
I think we said 5 records that we wish more people knew about.
Yeah, I think there'll be some people that know some of these. I mean, a lot of these, but they're kind of under the radar. I know all of these except for one I've never shown here on my channel. And for one reason or another, I wouldn't say they're cult records. I think they're beyond cult records, but I like them. Why don't you start first?
I'll start first. We're doing 5, right?
Because I'm the home team, so you're up to bat first, and I get to
That's right.
bottom of the ninth.
The top of the first. Or since we're doing 5, it's the top of the 5th to get us through the 9th.
Yeah.
Who cares? Baseball's not playing.
Baseball analogy, slide.
Yeah.
Right.
So my first is this. Can you see that okay? It's hard for me to.
That looks gregreat.
That's good.
I see a big bird, an eagle.
Yeah, this is the Pernice Brothers record.
Oh, it's not the Eagles?
The World Won't End. No, it's not the Eagles.
Okay.
I was gonna pick the Eagles, but I figure most people know.
Yeah.
That. Maybe there's an obscure Eagles.
The Long Cut. What's that last album they did? The long.
The long, yeah. The Long
Forget
Run.
it.
Is that the song? The Long Run. That's an Eagles song.
Yeah. I get confused with the Long Cut.
Do you know the Pernice Brothers?
I do not.
This session's going well so far. Joe Pernice was in a band called the Scud Mountain Boys. They were from Western Mass, I believe, or maybe not, maybe outside of Boston, maybe Eastern Mass. But I discovered the Scud Mountain Boys in '95 because I saw a show at Tramps in New York City. I don't know if you remember that venue.
I've been to Tramps.
Yeah, Wilco was the headliner. It was right when Wilco was sort of becoming known a little bit. Scud Mountain Boys opened, and then there was a band in between called Blue Mountain that I love. They played in the beginning. But Joe Pernice, following the demise of the Scud Mountain Boys, started the Pernice Brothers. One of his brothers was in the band, along with 3 or 4 other folks. Their best record, I think, was probably on Sub Pop. It was called Overcome by Happiness. And I remember do you remember the founder's name of Sub Pop? Jonathan. Is that it?
I forgot his name, but I've seen so many videos of him with the
Yeah,
whole thing when they didn't have money and the Nirvana sailed to
yeah,
Geffen and
yeah,
all that, right?
yeah. I think it's Jonathan something.
Yeah.
I read an interview with him once when he said the best record that Sub Pop ever put out that never got its due, which is what we're doing right here, right, was Overcome by Happiness. That's a phenomenal record. This followed. It's one of the few that are out on vinyl. The World Won't End. It's a very pop-heavy record. There's a song called The Ballad of Bjorn Borg. I mean, how do you beat that, right?
Right. Okay.
It's a fantastic song. Another song called Our Time Has Passed. Working Girls is a great one, 7:30. The Pernice Brothers, just if you don't know them, great indie pop band. Dive into their catalog, you won't regret it.
Okay.
It's my one.
I put mine in chronological order just because, and the first one I'm showing, people probably of my generation will know this artist, and that's Long John Baldry. Long John Baldry. There's always rumors why he was called Long John Baldry. However, it was because he was 6 feet 7 inches tall. He was a blues singer, white blues singer out of England, Canadian in England, but he was in England. And in the early 60s, he hooked up with a blues player, Alexis Corner, Blues Incorporated. That band played around London, East London, London, Richmond, where the Stones were from. And Charlie Watts played with them from the Stones. Mick Jagger did background vocals with them. He was part of that whole bluesy thing later with John Mayall and that whole era stuff. He then later started a band a few years later in the late 60s called Bluesology. The keyboard player of Bluesology was Reginald Dwight, who became Elton John. Elton John got his name from Elton Dean and John from Long John Baldry. This album came out in 1971 after Elton John started getting famous. And what's great about it, so Warner Brothers Records, side one was produced by Rod Stewart. Rod Stewart was part of that whole blues scene then too, and they were in bands together. So all these English, especially out of London, blues players played with Long John Baldry. Side two of this record is produced by Elton John. And it's got Maggie Bell, Leslie Duncan, who are background singers. It's got Ronnie Wood and a lot of kind of the session people from the time of rock and roll. Now, this album, the one big song called Don't Try to Lay No Boogie Woogie on the King of Rock and Roll, which is a 6-minute, 41-second bluesy, boogie woogie bluesy buildup talking about his history. And it's got this really kind of thick, like East London accent. It's just a great record, probably his most known record. It had mild airplay, got a lot of FM airplay in the early 70s, and at least in the Bay Area. My guess is in New York on the FM stations at the time, because it's one of those long tracks. But kind of a cult figure. He died, I think, 2005 in Canada, went back to Canada. But he's known in the whole blues scene that was happening in London that, again, the Stones came out of, and the Yardbirds, and all these John Mayall and McVie and Fleetwood Mac's rhythm section when they were more of a blues band. So I'm going with this album because really cool record. I don't think it's essentially really rare, but it's worth picking up if those of you out there who are into kind of the bluesy white blues of London in the late 60s, early 70s. Pretty cool record.
I had never heard of him, nor his band that he started.
Well,
What was the name of the band again?
Well, first was with Alexis Corner. He started Blues Incorporated like 62, really early. Bluesology was the band in the late 60s or just before Elton John left. I don't know if you saw the movie Rocket Man. Whether you like it or not, they show a thing of him playing keyboards when he went out and played in this blues band, and his name was Reginald Dwight. That's Elton John's real name, and he was in Bluesology, and he's the guy, and this is how Elton got his name, changed his name from Long John Baldry.
Good history lesson.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah, I'm noticing that most of my selections are in this very similar or same time frame. They're all within like 10 years of each other. So,
whatever,
let's see if you know these guys. So this is The Breaks. Now, 0 for 2, or maybe that means 2 for 2 since I'm showing you stuff. These guys, this record came out in 2005 on Rough Trade. Breaks are from the UK. I believe one or two of the guys was in the band British Sea Power. I don't know if you remember them.
I've heard of them, but I don't know them.
Did a little bit more fanfare than the Breaks did, but the Breaks put out 3 records. This was their first one. This is a perfect record. There's a song called Cheney about Dick Cheney, and it's 11 seconds long. They just scream Dick Cheney's name.
That's all you can say about him.
Yeah, yeah. And I saw them perform that at South by Southwest. It was 11 seconds.
Cheney.
I won't finish the song, but in the last 5 seconds, they say some things that, you know.
Never thought it could get worse after that guy.
Anyway. Yeah, right? This is a phenomenal record. Sort of poppy punk. They're pretty heavy. I saw them twice. I saw them in San Francisco once, and like I mentioned, at South by Southwest. I remember when I saw them at South by Southwest, it was such an incredible show that I remember I ran out of the venue when it ended to stop the guitar player to thank him. He gave me a big hug. It was really sweet because it was such a tremendous show. I don't think they make records anymore. Their last one was maybe 2010 or so. All of their records are good, but this one is top to bottom perfect. It's called Give Blood by the Breaks out of the UK. Have a listen.
Okay, there you go. I'm going to a artist album that's actually a soundtrack, yet it's just one artist. It's not incidental music, and that's the soundtrack to A Lucky Man by Alan Price. Alan Price was an original member of the Animals, the Animals, and he was the keyboard player on the first several Animals records. He's that famous great keyboard sound in House of the Rising Sun. The refrain on that. And he did some solo albums after that, but he made some great records. He left the band, but in 1973, this movie was directed by a British director who was a theater director and started motion picture director named Lindsay Anderson. He made a film called If, and the star of that film, early film, was Malcolm McDowell, who we all know later from A Clockwork Orange. He made this film right after, I believe, right around the same time or right after Clockwork Orange with Malcolm McDowell. And within the movie, it's a bizarre movie about a coffee bean salesman, and it's really creepy, wild fantasy. And there's a period within the movie, they're in the van, he gets picked up by this band on the road, and it's Alan Price and his band, and the music plays throughout a lot of the film. Lucky Man's a great kind of pop rock and roll, but not hard. It's got a great piano-based feel to it, really melodic and really good. It's a short record, I think less than 30 minutes, but wonderful record. And A Lucky Man, it's about a 2.5-hour film. It's one of my all-time favorite films, but it's a bizarre film, and it's worth checking out. So I'm going with Oh Lucky Man.
Is that the Emerson, Lake and Palmer song? Was there a song, Lucky Man? Ooh, what a
lucky
Lucky
Man. Yeah, that's Lucky Man. That was before this. Oh Lucky Man.
I like that song.
Yeah, that's a great. That was the reason I bought their first album, with that great synthesizer bit and great vocals by Lake. Greg Lake.
My turn?
Yes.
I think we're in the top of the 7th. Look at that.
Hi.
It's the Archivist. Did you bring records?
Oh. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good.
You're talking to everyone.
It's good to
Amanda, the Archivist.
Hi, VC.
Oh,
I'm not here for handing out the tunes today. I'm just popping in to say hi. And
why don't you grab a CD from behind you and at random and tell us if you like it?
Well, while I'm showing this, if you think about pulling something, pull it. I mean, not about random, but
what is that?
I pulled it at random. The Paul Simon songbook.
Oh, this is
definitely good.
I'm not. Yeah, this is a.
Listen to it today.
This is a solo folk album that he did after the first Simon & Garfunkel record. The first Simon & Garfunkel record bombed, so he goes to London and wrote some more songs, and this is what came out of it. It was released later, and it's really a good record.
See, told you it was definitely good.
It was not a bad job.
Thanks. Yeah, working hard. What's your next record?
Your turn, Chris.
My turn, Mazzy. My next record, The V-Roys.
I don't know
I'm
that.
I'm striking out with your pitches.
So Steve Earle signed these guys when Steve Earle and Ray Kennedy, I think his name is, started E Squared Records. E Squared, yeah. In sort of the mid 2000s, I think they signed a bunch of great artists that I loved at the time. The V-Roys, Cherie Knight. They signed Marat.
We're supposed to be 6 feet apart.
Oh yeah. Oh, we're far enough apart.
Yeah,
I saw
California.
the V-Roys once. I don't know if you remember the Wetlands in New York City. It was like a jam band venue. Like I think Fish played there, and the V-Roys.
I missed that one probably on purpose.
Probably, I never went there either, except to see the V-Roys once. They played with Steve Earle on Conan O'Brien, I think, and that night they played at Wetlands. They wore suits at every show, as you can see here. They're sitting at a bar wearing suits.
Swanky.
Yeah, they all wore black, really nice suits. They're from Knoxville, Tennessee.
I want people to dress up again when this is all over.
I mean, like we're doing right now, right? Or like America is doing right now.
Real Fine Coffee, Seattle.
Yeah,
Import them. Buy a shirt, buy a mug, buy some beans.
Yeah, my hair is it's got a lot going on up there.
Yeah.
Scott Miller, who's right here, is a farmer in Virginia, and he spends half of his time, well, more than half his time, working his farm, and the rest of the time playing shows. The farm was handed down by his parents. There's a bunch of great YouTube sort of interviews with him on his farm. He's such a sweet guy. He has a ton of cows, and he walks around playing his guitar. He still makes records, and they are incredible. I saw him once at the Lakeside Lounge in New York City, probably around 2004 or 5. The V-Roys only made two records and a live record, I think, and then they disbanded. Last point on this, they played, I think it was 2015, they played a reunion show on New Year's Eve at, I think, the Best Theater in Knoxville, which is where they're from. It's beautiful theater. I had tickets to go and I bailed at the last minute, and I still regret it. Not as much as when I bailed on Joe Strummer, but this is pretty close because I'll never
that would be a video. People you bailed on that shows you should have gone to. That's a whole other thing. Maybe
Joe Strummer, a few months before he died, I had a free ticket to see him at St. Anne's Warehouse in Brooklyn. My girlfriend at the time had made a really nice dinner, and I felt bad about leaving. And then he died a few months later. And then we broke up about a year later.
The bailing stories are good, or the near misses. It's a near miss story. I've told here about the Beatles, and I won't get into that.
Yeah.
My mother's dead, and she said next year, and the Beatles never played.
Anyway, I'm out of here, guys.
All right.
Yeah.
Take care. We'll phone you.
All right, you're next.
Right when you get work. The next person, I think a lot of people know about, but they don't know about his records. They know about his production. People know about the film and the soundtrack, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, produced by Tbone Burnett. Tbone Burnett is a great producer and a great arranger, a great artist. I first got into him. When I worked in record stores, Arista Records put out these 2 or 3 records by a band called the Alpha Band. And the Alpha Band was his band with Dave Mansfield. And I don't know if it was a result of that or around that exact same time, around 1976, he went on tour, that famous circus with Bob Dylan, the Rolling Thunder Review. And he kind of organized the band, brought it together. That's when Roger McGuinn was on it, and David Soles also played with Alpha Band too. So he gets signed to Warner Brothers in the 80s. Again, you all know him for producing everyone from Gillian Welch to several of her records.
Willie Nelson, right?
Willie Nelson. I mean, he's produced over the last 30 years. He's produced a lot of people. I do have a record. My last record is one of his productions, which I'll get into. But anyway, he worked for Warner Brothers. I mean, he did a few records for Warner Brothers that didn't really do much. I'm including both these together because there was a CD package of the Warner Brothers years, that 3 records. This is actually an EP. What's really interesting about this, there's this great kind of out there rockin' rendition.
I thought the video was pixelated.
It is. That's the way the photograph is on purpose. But there's a great version. He was working on a Broadway play, writing the music for what was going to be a Broadway play, never happened, of Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend, Marilyn Monroe movie. And there's a version on here of Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend, which is really friggin' rocking. I almost, if I was doing needle drops, I'd include this, but on these videos, I don't add music on. It's so great. This is an EP, and this is the record that came out a few years earlier, I believe, Proof Through the Night. And his music is a little freak folk, obviously country, Americana before it was called Americana. There's some retro rock and roll. There's some sort of beat poetry, kind of halfway speaking during his music. A lot of storytelling. There's a great song on here. Is it this record? Fatally Beautiful and the Murder Weapon. Ry Cooder's on here. Stan Lynch is on here, who was with the the Heartbreakers for a while. Pete Townsend, Richard Thompson. It's just a really, really great artist. I have all his solo records, some on CD, not a lot on vinyl, but his solo stuff's amazing. I mean, again, we know him at more of his productions of the soundtrack he's done. He did actually that movie, which a lot of people kind of were turned off to, but the Julie Taymor film, Across the Universe, of these Beatle covers. He arranged really interesting Beatles songs with Joe Cocker and a lot of wonderful people, and it's just a great soundtrack. Eddie Izzard too. It's kind of like, it's really hard to make a Beatles song original and feel original, but he did it with that soundtrack. So I'm going with Tbone Burnett.
That's a good one for me to check out.
Yeah, this is I mean, for CD, this is a great 2005 package double CD that has the 3 Warner Brothers records on it. Really cool. But his later stuff's even cooler, I think. His later albums. I think the last album came out maybe 6 years ago, his last solo album. So Tbone Burnett,
Nice.
Great producer, great artist.
Top of the 8th, right? I mentioned.
You didn't have maybe the 7th inning stretch was when Amanda came by.
About that, yeah.
I didn't stand up or.
So, yeah, we didn't do the Cracker Jack song, the baseball song. Picking up
Yeah.
We needed Harry Carey for that.
Right.
So I mentioned her earlier, but I can't get enough of this artist. She's probably my favorite songwriter going right now. And this, I think, is her best record, Joan Shelley.
Striking out.
Yeah, the woman I mentioned from Louisville, Kentucky, is friends
Right.
with Oldham, and she has maybe 4 or 5 records. They're all great, but this one, as I said, is my favorite. This came out, I think, in 2015. So I discovered her at the Solid Sound Festival, the Wilco curated festival they do every other year up in Western Massachusetts. At Mass Mocha. She was one of the artists, and I was blown away. So I went and bought all of her records. Again, she just released a live record today, which I listened to right before we started this video. It's only available on Bandcamp, and it sounds incredible. But this record is called Over and Even. It's my favorite of hers. Great shot of her and her musical partner, whose name is escaping me right now. But Will Oldham plays on this, as does James Elkington, who's another, Nathan Salzberg, that's her musical partner. They have some great YouTube videos of them performing in Louisville and a bunch of different radio stations. I can't recommend her enough, Joan Shelley.
Are you a Bonnie Prince Billy fan?
I am, yeah. I mean, I
don't think he's ever made a bad record. Now, some say some of his records are too much alike. They get a little introspective, but I just love that about him. And his last album is actually
I Made a Place.
It's really upbeat for him. I mean,
latest I Made a Place is great.
Isn't it? Yeah, that was one in my top of last year when I did my whatever top.
Yeah, I've seen him once live, and it was so good that I won't see him again live because I want to remember. I saw him at the Henry Miller Library in Big Sur.
I've never seen him.
Neil Young's ex-wife. What was her name? Neil Young's ex-wife.
The one who died.
Yeah.
Peggy.
Peggy Young. She opened for Bonnie Prince Billy.
She's good. She
was good. Yeah. And it was so exceptional that I literally thought I could never top it. Like, I want to remember Bonnie Prince Billy just by that one show. Maybe that's weird. I should see him again, but I love him.
I'd like to see him.
So many records too.
Yeah, he puts out a lot of records. Yeah, and he's on a lot of other people's records, which I like, and he guests with people. I love that.
Yeah, the Super Wolf records that he guests.
And he's an actor. He's been in a lot of films. Character actor.
Yeah, he's a great actor.
Yeah, he's really good. He's a type. I'm going with someone. Again, I'm up to 1980s. I didn't get past the 80s.
Well, I didn't go before.
Second album by Laurie Anderson. People who know Laurie Anderson usually know her first album with the song "Oh Superman," avant-garde. She did an independent single, which I had the indie single for in the 70s, called "Oh Superman." Warner Brother picks up the album. It's a really bizarre but gorgeously beautiful conceptual album, which she was doing. She was one of the early artists at doing tape loops and things. And her main thing, she was out of the whole New York East Village avant-garde conceptual movement in a way. But she would play the violin, electric violin, but she replaced the strings of her bow with magnetic recording tape. And she would do a thing that almost like a going over a tape head and making sounds of vocal sounds of tape loops and vocal things like vocoder things when that was early, but really amazing stuff. But I don't know if you ever heard "Oh Superman." If people haven't, you got to listen. It's like a 6-minute piece. I always try to sing on these things, and I ain't going to do it. Anyway, the second album on Warner Brothers is probably a more song-based record, and it's called Sharky's or Mr. Heartbreak. But there's one song that's repeated, different versions, Sharky's Day and Sharky's Night. And William Burroughs is on it and speaks on it with her and co-wrote, I don't know if he actually co-wrote some of the things with her. And he's got that, if you know William Burroughs' speaking voice, it's kind of that Sharky's back kind of thing like that. Produced by Bill Laswell, who did a whole bunch of stuff in the 80s, like African Bombata with Johnny Lydon. Did a Yoko record that Tony Williams, jazz drummer, is on. Did with Golden Palominos in New York with Anton Fear and these and Anton Fear's on here. Adrian Belew, great guitar player who was in King Crimson for a while. Peter Gabriel's on here. There's a great duet called "Excellent Birds" with Peter Gabriel. Nile Rodgers guitar is on here. It's just a beautiful record. It doesn't have the 80s flourishes that get dangerous, but it does have a little of that electronic thing. But artsy record, a little conceptual, but this is probably more relatable than the early one. But I'm a big Laurie Anderson fan. I think when she first came by San Francisco, she does these multimedia pieces out of New York. And she came in when the Kabuki Theater had rock shows before they changed it into a movie theater. Bill Graham put on shows there, and I saw her with this great conceptual art piece there, and it was friggin' incredible. But I'm going with Laurie Anderson's second album, Mr. Heartbeat.
Nice.
Heartbreak.
I mean, I think we're, at least in terms of us introducing each other to new music, I think we're 8 for 8.
Well, yeah.
None of your 4 records am I familiar with, and it seems
I don't know any of them.
Yeah. Wow, this has been
So I guess now this is your last one.
Yeah, top of the 9th, right? This is when you're bringing the closers. This one is by an artist that I talk about all the time, but a record of his that I don't think gets nearly the attention and sort of acclaim that it should. I think it's one of the best records he's ever done, and this is the Jay Farrar solo record, Sebastopol.
I don't have that. I know him. I have his music, but I don't have that record.
This one came out in 2001. It was right after he initially disbanded Sunvolt, or at least put them on hiatus. It's named after the city north of San Francisco, Sebastopol, up in Northern California. It was reissued on Record Store Day. I'm looking right here. They reissued 1,000 of them. I got number 841 in 2016 by Transmit Sound, which I believe is his own label. This is just a fantastic record. Some of the best songs he's ever written. Gillian Welch plays on this, as does David Rawlings. Kelly Jo Phelps plays on this. It was produced by Farrar and John and Yellow. Just a great gatefold that I think all of us record collectors on Record Store Day usually have a few that sort of we get the list in advance, we get that PDF, and we see the few records that we have to have. I think in all the years I've gone to record store day, nothing excited me more than seeing this come out on vinyl.
Really?
Yeah. So Jay Farrar from obviously Uncle Tupelo, as well as Sunvolt, is also in a side project called Gob Iron with the guy from Varnaline. But this solo record I can't recommend enough. It looks like it's probably hard to find on vinyl, but play it on CD or your streaming services. A fantastic Farrar record.
Yeah, I have some Sunvolt CDs. I have one LP.
Trace,
have,
got it, right?
Yeah.
Traces are phenomenal.
Yeah. And I have several CDs. That was a period I was buying mostly CDs, obviously.
Yeah.
Was that mid 2000s or early 2000s?
The first Sunvolt was 95 to 99.
Okay, well, I got a few of those, and plus, yeah.
That's my closer. That's my Mariano Rivera. Was
out of all those bands, I think we talked about that the other night when we had our little cocktail thing, the three of us. And out of all those bands, and they might be the more commercial one, even though they weren't the biggest seller, but the Jayhawks were really my favorite of all those. I've seen them several times, and I have everything but the Jayhawks. So,
well, they reissued almost their whole catalog like 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, that's when I picked most of those up. Yeah.
Gary Loris is an incredible.
What a voice! I mean, it's a kind of an angelic voice. So some people like that kind of the other voices, like of Jeff Tweedy and Jay Farrar, but his is more that golden thing. But it's so beautiful.
Yeah. Jayhawks are such a great band.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to end up.
All right.
I'm sticking in the family for a while. Tbone Burnett produced this album by Sam Phillips. Sam Phillips, 15 tracks, 15 songs produced by Tbone Burnett. Martinis and Bikinis, Sam Phillips. Sam Phillips, not to be confused with Sam Phillips, who discovered and recorded Elvis Presley and Sun Studios. She's a woman, and
she has an album called Fan Dance, right?
Yes, I have everything her. She's in LA. She was married to Tbone for 15 to 20 years. I have everything she's done. The Incredible Wow, or Incredible or Indestructible Wow was her first album signed to Virgin Records. She was on Virgin for a number of years. This was originally on Virgin. It was reissued on vinyl. I think this came out on CD during the time when vinyl wasn't really a thing coming out. The photographer who did this, I used to know of through my business. His name is Jeff Kern out of Texas, very conceptual artist. But her work is, it's very, it's got that dirgy production, sort of swampy production by Tbone Burnett, yet it's very Beatley pop. There's a song on here called Strawberry Road, which has, violins and cellos and very Beatley, like I Am the Walrus. Doesn't sound like that song, but very catchy pop stuff. She still puts out albums. She has her own website. She does some amazing other stuff. She actually, for all the years, ironically, did the soundtrack to a TV show that I never heard, but I actually just ordered an old used CD, The Gilmore Girls. And she scored that and brought all these indie artists in. And there's a great soundtrack. I got it because there was a John Lennon piece and the Yoko song on there. But I didn't realize that that's the production people who do Mrs. Maisel on Netflix, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. She does the score for that in LA. She plays in a place called Club Largo occasionally in LA. I don't know if that's in Hollywood or off of Hollywood.
You've never been to Largo?
No.
Oh man, it's a great place. Like
it's really kind of clubby, right?
John Bryan plays there all the time. Amy Mann.
Well, exactly. Well, she's part of that whole clique of things. She's amazing, and this I can't recommend this enough. She's known. Her records don't sell a ton. Ironically, she was, because of this record, the director of the third Bruce Willis Die Hard movie with Jeremy Irons cast her, and she plays Jeremy Irons' second. Well, hardly has I don't think she has a speaking part, but she's the mean ass. Thought she looked like this German spy because of her face. But gorgeous, gorgeous record. Martinis and Bikinis. Any record of hers is good, but I think this is probably her best record. And it's very accessible. It's very, it's pop, but it's, anyway, I love it. It's a catchy record, but in a really wonderful way. So,
I have heard of that record. I've never listened to it, but I've heard of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just you know, I don't know what to say about it, but anything of hers I'll pick up. I've downloaded, subscribed to her website, follow her on Instagram and wherever she is and everything. I'd love to see those Largo things. Apparently there's a live video of a whole setup performance she did that came out last year. You can download. I haven't done that yet, but
You can never get down to LA for a show at Largo.
yeah, I've heard about it a lot. It's just for some reason I've never done it. So
Tiny room. Elliott Smith used to play there all the time.
yeah, yeah.
Joe
I've been to the
plays there.
what's the great club across from the old Hollywood Palace with the old couple that plays keyboards, the lounge act where they used in the movie Swingers.
Oh yeah.
Just the D. Yeah. Anyway, that's it. Oh,
The game's over, right?
game's over.
Fans are leaving.
None of us had any of the other albums the other ones have. So if anyone else has any albums to suggest, of course there's a million of them. I mean, don't put them down or don't write in the comments.
Yeah.
I will put a link to your, depending how you are on the screen here. It's always weird. I go like this and I think it turns out away from me. So you're here, you're there. I will put a link to your channel. Subscribe to Chris's channel.
I would put a link to your channel, but everyone who follows me already follows you.
So, well, this is going to be on my channel anyway. So if they see this, they're already there.
Oh yeah.
This doesn't show up on your channel. Sorry.
Okay.
You know,
Technology.
now with this whole Corona pandemic thing, everyone is kind of doing these interchanging cohabitation videos. So people like them, I guess. So I like them.
Yeah.
All right, Chris.
Thank you for the idea. This was a
Happy
lot of
Easter.
fun.
Happy. Isn't this Good Friday?
I believe it is. Yeah.
I'm so fucking good about it, right? Sorry, I shouldn't say that. I don't want to offend the Easter egg hunters out there.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, take care. It was great.
Have a good weekend.
Okay.
All right. See ya.